The new 7-star Tera Ice Iron Bundle raid is here, so let's go over how to deal with it, shall we? Now first off, let's address the elephant in the room here. This raid is one of the first 7-star Tera raids to not have the ability to boost its own attack power. However, that being the case, do not underestimate it, because Iron Bundle is already quite powerful on its own. Not to mention the boost it gets to its already powerful ice attacks by being Tera Ice. So this Iron Bundle should not be underestimated. Though that being said, there are some pretty easy ways to deal with it, so let's get into that. First up, its attacks. Iron Bundle's coming equipped with Freeze Dry to do extra damage to any water types you might have brought. Considering water types are resistant to Iron Bundle's best moves, it only makes sense it has an extra move here to deal with them. It also comes equipped with Hydro Pump to deal with any fire or rock types you might have thought of bringing. Blizzard for some high ice damage that is 100% accuracy in the snow, and Chilling Water to do some water type damage and lower the attack power of any physical attacker you may have thought of bringing. On the utility side of things, it's packing Snowscape to give it a defensive buff as well as to add some extra utility, such as Aurora Veil, to half the incoming damage of all physical and special attacks so long as the snow keeps flying. And just because its ability Quirk Drive would be useless without it, Electric Terrain, to give itself a special attack boost later in the raid. Now before we get into raid tactics, we should probably talk about the scripted events, because that'll change matters a little bit. First and foremost, right at the beginning of the raid, Iron Bundle is going to use both Snowscape and Aurora Veil. This not only gives it a straight up defense buff, but also halves all the incoming damage from every attack. So up front, it's going to be a little harder to damage it unless you deal with that. Changing the weather on it or using something like Brick Break to break the screen in the first place is probably the best way to do that. Its shield goes up when either its HP or the timer bar drops to about 80%, which means unless somebody starts swinging real hard right at the beginning of the game, you probably have about 3 turns before it puts up the shield. Which means anybody relying on Screech or Metal Sound builds should probably drop all 3 immediately. With about 3/4 of its HP bar left, it will use Electric Terrain to give itself a boost, and it will reset the snow with about half the timer left as well. Though it won't waste time resetting Aurora Veil at that point, so it's just the defense boost. As for stat resets, it only does one of each, resetting your stats about the same time the shield goes up, and its own at a little under half of its HP remaining. Which means Screech and Metal Sound builds do real well here, because you can get in all 3 before the shield goes up, and it's not going to reset its own stats until after the shield is down. That being said, if you're running a heavy offensive build, don't bother boosting your attack rate out of the gate. Since you've got about 3 turns until he resets your stats, there's almost no point. So you should go ahead and get some attacks in up front to boost your Tera gauge, and then once he resets your stats, start boosting. Now being that both of Iron Bundle's attack and defensive buffs are all based on weather and terrain, it is really easy to set up a build to counter that. All you gotta do is set up your own weather. Sunny Day is probably the best in this scenario, considering it will lower the attack power of Iron Bundle's water moves, as well as making it impossible for anyone on your team to be frozen while that weather's up. Also, Misty Terrain is a wonderful way to counteract the Electric Terrain in this scenario, as it will have the side benefit of preventing your entire team from being frozen. And if you didn't catch on already from those last 2 bits, you will be frozen. A fair amount. So your build should probably have some way to counteract that. Otherwise, you're going to be relying a lot on Heal Cheers to thaw you out. Now for typing when selecting your Pokemon, Rock and Fire type you should probably avoid since both of those are weak to water, but if you can counteract that weakness a little bit with a secondary typing, then you could still make them work. So honestly, the best bet here is to probably go for some fighting or steel types, because both of those will be super effective in this scenario without being actually weak to any of Iron Bundle's attacks. But steel type is probably the best here, because not only is it resistant to ice attacks, it takes neutral damage from water, which means the steel type can tank out all of Iron Bundle's best moves. Also, if you want to work in something like Struggle Bug or Spirit Break, that might be for the best, because with no way to boost its own attack power, if you start lowering it, it is no way to reset it back to neutral again until it resets its own stats when it's already more than half dead. I think that sums everything up pretty well. Time your defense lowering and attack boosting moves accordingly. Light Screen is a godsend as always, and make sure you have a way to switch over the weather and set terrain to counteract him. Maybe lower his attack power. There's not a lot he can do. With all that said, I think it's time for what most people are actually here for. My builds for beating the 7-star Ice Tera Iron Bundle. Starting on the offensive side of things, we have Poliwrath. Now, Poliwrath does take a fair amount of damage from Freeze Dry, so you want to Tera it to Tera Fighting as soon as you possibly can. Drop a couple Drain Punches up front to keep your health topped up, and then Tera away before you Belly Drum. Just make sure you have more than half of your HP before you Belly Drum, or else you're just going to waste your turn. Poliwrath also comes with a way to deal with all the defensive buffs by using Rain Dance. Rain Dance will take away the snow, which will immediately cancel out the Aurora Veil. And while it does give a damage buff to Iron Bundle's water attacks, with the Water Absorb ability, Poliwrath really doesn't care because all that's going to do is heal it. Once Poliwrath is safely belly drummed, you just Drain Punch to victory. And yes, it does take a fair amount of damage from Freeze Dry, but as long as you're behind Light Screen, it really shouldn't matter too much. Speaking of Light Screen, let's talk about our first support build of this raid, Blissey. An absolute classic support Pokemon for a good reason. Blissey can tank anything Iron Bundle can throw at it without fail. With Light Screen to half the incoming damage, Life Dew to heal your team, and Helping Hand to boost the damage of your offensive teammates. And as a bonus, the Healer ability, to make sure if any of your teammates do get frozen, they probably unfreeze the very next turn. Also, for this version of the build, I've opted to do without leftovers, instead put Covert Cloak on this build, as the Covert Cloak will prevent Blissey from being frozen by any of Iron Bundle's moves. And honestly, doing without the leftovers doesn't matter too much, because Iron Bundle really isn't doing much damage to this thing. Definitely not enough that Life Dew isn't just healing it. For a second support build, we have Alcremie. New to the game with the Indigo Disc DLC, Alcremie is a returning Pokemon from Gen 8, and a wonderful support Pokemon to have in general. Now, the only downside is Alcremie does not heal your team, however it's really good at buffing them, with Light Screen to lower the incoming damage and Misty Terrain to prevent the electric terrain, and to stop your teammates from being frozen. It also comes equipped with Helping Hand to boost your teammates' damage for a turn, and Decorate, its unique move that boosts its teammates' attack and special attack by 2 stages each, meaning no matter what the offensive build you're teamed up with, you can boost their damage for them and speed up the process. Like maybe giving Poliwrath a little bit of a buff to its attack power when it's just using Drain Punch early in the raid, or giving it even bigger buff to any of your teammates who are focusing on lowering the opponent's defenses instead of boosting their own attack. And with leftovers, Alcremie manages to tank through most of this, though you will need to use some heal cheers occasionally because once again, it's kinda minus a way to heal itself. And last but not least, my final offensive build of the set, but also a Pokemon who can solo the raid if you're minus some teammates. I present to you Empoleon! The strategy with this Empoleon is as follows. Immediately into the raid, drop 3 Metal Sounds before the shield goes up, giving Iron Bundle a -6 to its special defense, and then start to Flash Cannon. Now it's very possible that Iron Bundle just takes you out here before you get to attack, so you could drop a Heal Cheer instead to keep yourself alive. But honestly, you're not losing anything by fainting here, so you honestly might as well take the 5 seconds just to be brought back to full health. Attack 3 times with Flash Cannon to get your Terra gauge up, using Roost to top yourself up if you get hit a little too hard. And once you have your Terra charge, go Terra Steel and hit it with another Flash Cannon. Once the shield goes down, you should be in wonderful position for the final hit, and that is Steel Beam. Now, I will warn you, only use Steel Beam if you are at max HP at the beginning of the turn, because otherwise there's a good chance you're probably going to faint in the process. Steel Beam will do absolutely massive damage to the Iron Bundle, but it will also remove half of your max HP. However, don't worry about that too much, because as long as you survive using the hit, Shell Bell will go off and heal you back to full. Now at this point, the Iron Bundle should already be down, but if it's not for some reason, just hit it with another Flash Cannon or Steel Beam, and it should do the trick. And that's the raid! Thank you everybody for watching. If you like my Tera Raid content, make sure to like, comment, subscribe for more. And if you want help facing off against these 7-star raids, me and my group are always doing them on stream Thursday night when they first come out, about 7 p.m., 8 p.m. EST. So if you want help with that, check me out at twitch.tv/IXI Studios. And we're always around to help you out night 1 of the raid. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.